you have 100,000 refugees or 100,000 immigrants applying. We can select who we want, and we can select, do we want salespeople?
Yeah.
Do we want warehouse managers? Do we want farmland people? Do we want technicians? We should be able to get the technicians, and we should be able to set them up in a proper way, and especially in rural Canada, Western Canada, and put them on that career path, but they're not.
Today on True Patriot Love, I'm lucky to have Eden Morchaev, and we're going to talk about Canadian rural West and the economy and employment. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hey,
good to be here. Yeah.
So interesting background. I was talking to Mike, and he said I needed to talk to you because Mike just came back from the west coast of Canada, and he had crazy stories about what's happening in the agri world, what's happening across Western Canada as far as employment. So you're in that space.
Yeah.
So take us through, give me a feel for what you're working with right now and some of the challenges you're seeing.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, my background is in global trade compliance. My title before was trade management executive, so everything related to exactly what we're talking about. I currently lead a recruitment agency in logistics, hiring across Canada. So everything from warehouse workers all the way up to operation managers, directors, and VPs. Everything related to logistics, supply chain. So pretty much right up this alley.
Yeah. So, people come to you. I need someone from a logistics specialist on the West Coast to help me with my farming business, with my rural cannabis. Who are they looking for right now? So this is the interesting, because we do a lot of immigration shows, and it's very interesting to see in these shows, they're saying, okay, we're not gonna get these work permits extended. We're not gonna do this. We're gonna send people back. Who are they looking for, and why? And there's so many things going on with agriculture in the West right now, and so many opportunities, and with automation and technology and engineering. It's so interesting to me that the government's not trying to redeploy the resources we have in the country, and they're taking this kind of brush and they're swiping it across and saying, "Oh, you're going to go eventually." What are you finding?
The first one is they want to find real trades workers, right? There's a difference from, you mentioned immigration and immigrants. There's a difference from skilled trade workers and blue collar workers, right? So those who have certificates, pretty much stuff like that. I understand that is important, and technicians and managing farmlands and managing logistics companies, they need to have those certificates.
Yeah.
The government does give them the ability to go out and get those. Do they get them is a different story.
Right.
I don't think they really did it proper the first time of bringing in the correct immigrants and the correct people. Keep in mind that, there is fault on the companies as well. It goes both ways, right? I mean, let's take a step back, right, just from the rural side, and we'll get right back into it. Look at corporate America, all across Canada and United States. Companies are hiring and firing, and mass layoffs are happening, right? What happened in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s? You were a company man. You went and you worked for a company for 20, 30, 40 years. You retired. You were able to be a factory worker and live on that and buy a house with 2-car garage and go on vacation. And it really went away. And it's funny, you mentioned sending them back and all that. When you look at Meta, when you look at Google, when you look at even Canadian companies that are doing mass layoffs, it created the scarcity among people. And, we're a recruitment agency, and the first thing candidates ask us right now, has this company done mass layoffs? Even there's a 78% on employees that, even though they weren't affected by the layoffs, they didn't get fired, they still want to leave the company over the toxicness and the culture that they created. When you look at why they created it, when you look at why these companies hire and fire and mass hire and mass fire, it's because they know that nobody wants to go work for them. And the truth is, not just that recruiting for them is really difficult, but the truth is that they can now go to the government and say, hey, look, we can't fill this position. It's been open for a year. Well, yeah, you created that scarcity. You created that culture where Americans and Canadians don't want to go work for you, just so you can create that scarcity, just so you go to government and now bring in employees from other countries at a much lower rate. Now, as shitty as that is, what they're doing right is they're getting the skilled employees they need when the government finally approves them. In Canada, we didn't do that, especially in rural, especially in farmland. We didn't bring in those, the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
So It's kind of up to you and how you want to look at it. The fault is on both sides. Do you really want to get the immigrants who wanted to leave or blame them? They wanted to leave their country at any cost, right? They didn't come here knowing that the government didn't prepare them properly. But that's the truth, that they didn't prepare them properly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, in a lot of senses, they were sold the dream, right? The streets are filled with gold. You're going to come here, get a great job, get an education, and find a job immediately. That's not working out in a lot of cases, right? And as you know,
No.
in the agri world on the West Coast right now, so it's interesting because we've done a few shows on it, and we're starting to see the development, and I think in a big way, and probably in the agri world, especially when we're coming through all these CUSMA issues, with Mexico. The labor demand in the agri world, and also what are you seeing from a logistics perspective with people starting to figure out ways to grow things, to build things, to actually develop the agri world out in the West Coast? Are you seeing a big change through technology or in the demands that people are having?
Not as fast as it should be, not as how other countries are doing it. UK, believe it or not, has better technology with their farmers, and they're giving it, and we don't have that yet. And look at the immigration. What are the numbers? Like 6.2% unemployment, but within Canadian citizens, 6.2%. Immigrants are around 11%. But what's interesting is long-term immigrants are almost the same numbers as Canadian citizens, like born in Canada. So long-term immigrants have figured it out. The new immigrants that are coming in within the last 5 years have not. I think 5 to 10 years is 8.2%. 1 to 5 years is 11%. And then long-term that are over 10 years here are at 6.2%, which is really great because it's long-term as well, just like Canadian citizens born here in Canada. But they come here and they don't want to do the work. They don't have the right technology to do the work. And they don't have the right spaces for it as well. So do you blame them? I don't know. I'll tell you my family story. We migrated here from Israel when I was 8 years old, single mom and 4 kids. Not to get personal, but my mom worked a bunch of factory jobs before her sister got her job in orthopedic medical supplies, small office for custom-made orthotics and all that. We then went and it took years to get there, but we opened up our own as a family, and we managed to buy a house, 4 bedrooms, a nice car and all that. Yeah. So the question now comes, is the government setting up the right processes and working with farmers, especially out in Winnipeg, especially out there? Exactly what the process is. Is it supposed to be a temporary job until you get yourself set up and ready to go and you go out on your own venture and do things? Or is it supposed to be a long-term, for the rest of your life job? It is, but they won't do it because they can't break their backs all day long, right? But at the same time, you need to do something. So it kind of works both ways.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's been around since I've been a kid, and I'm going on my 60s right now. And farmers have always had a hard time convincing their kids to stay on the farm. And, when I was in my 30s, late 30s, I actually spent some time with a farm. I enjoyed it immensely. But then I looked at it and I thought, is this a long-term thing for me? And I realized it wasn't, quite frankly. I was going to switch careers at that point. I made the decision to stay what I was doing. And all the young people that were around me and were working with me at the same time were heading to Toronto, were heading to BC. None of them were staying on the farms and working. And it becomes an issue of how do I sell my farm, get someone to come and take it over? And if Canadians don't want to do it, how do we get new immigrants to do it? And that's the challenge, especially now with all the technology. Farming. Farming's not, I think you hit on it. Farming has become technologically very complicated. It's not like when I was, younger and used to see the guy out there with just a basic tractor. Now, it's AI driven, it's GPS synced. It's, that you almost have to be a computer software engineer to run a farm just to make it work. How do you find new Canadians coming in that actually will do that work? And that's the challenge, and make the financial commitment to do it.
A lot of people are applying. It's who we're taking, right? It's who we're accepting into it. So you have 100,000 refugees or 100,000 immigrants applying. We can select who we want, and we can select, do we want salespeople?
Yeah.
Do we want warehouse managers? Do we want farmland people? Do we want technicians? We should be able to get the technicians, and we should be able to set them up in a proper way, and especially in rural Canada, Western Canada, and put them on that career path. But they're not. They're just not. They're kind of coming in within an open territory, and you can do what you want, when you want, how you want. Again, that's fine, but the problem with it is I don't think they're giving them the proper choice, because if you're not educated on what you're going to do, then you're not going to have the proper choice. Let's put it this way. You're coming here from Iran, right? You and your entire family. You get 1 year of a little bit of help from the government, and then you're out there on your own. Now, you're coming in here and you're being sold a dream, and you don't have the right expertise to do anything. Well, then, that's kind of on you, and it's kind of on the taxpayers as well. We can help them out, get them a proper, equivalent of a GED and high school diploma, and go, and that's fine. Not a lot of people are educated, but they still come here and they make a lot of money. But what are we doing to fix the rural issues in Western Canada, especially in farming, agriculture, logistics? We can definitely bring in people who are not the exact fit, but 80% fit, 70% fit, and retrofit them. Given the proper education, they'll take it over.
The government, I'm with you. And the government continually tries to do programs like the Rural and Northern Immigration Pilot Plan. They say they work. They say whether it's in, Saskatchewan or other places. I don't know if that's the right approach.
It hasn't been effective.
Okay.
It hasn't. It's not. Sorry, when I said they're not doing it effectively.
Yeah.
They're just not. They're not doing it effectively. The education is not done properly for them. It's a lot easier, when, first of all, I got to give credit to Mark Carney in some things, right? I understand what's happening to him. He took over during Donald Trump, second term era, when just pure craziness happened. Huge portion of our trade is with the U.S. Now he has to go and try to renegotiate with all these different countries who we've never done business with. Mm-hmm. And that's going to take time. So I'll give him a little bit of credit for that. He's trying to figure it out. All right, fine. But that's more for the export side of things. When it comes to produce, when it comes to agriculture, we can produce plenty over here. We can export plenty over here. I don't think the right people are in place. I don't think the right government programs are in place. He's inherited a really bad government, and he's trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's about to go into CUSMA. So let's talk about CUSMA for a minute in agriculture. So he's about to go into, there's discussion, the doom and gloom coming up to July 1, right? And so, we've done a number of shows on this. The U.S. is kind of tinkering with him. I think yesterday we're starting to start discussions on steel coming out of the G7. So that is positive. I guess discussions are coming. Other than the hot mic incident with Carney and Trump. Yeah, that didn't go well. But planned or not, that's what it was. Agriculture and CUSMA, because there's the really tough part right now. We have all these crazy supply management issues when it comes to milk and other things that we're not willing to concede on. The U.S. is saying, well, if you're not willing to concede on it, then we're not budging either. So that's going to cause a problem. And then you look at what happened in Mexico between Sheinbaum and Greer on the last discussion when they went first. It doesn't look like a great picture on the ag side. He really was very tough on Mexico with respect to agriculture, saying you better give up some of your energy resources or, quite frankly, we're going to cut off your ag. Are you getting any sense of where he's going with this in Canada and where CUSMA is going to affect rural Canada and the West?
Trump said he's going to dismantle CUSMA. Nobody knows exactly what that means. He claims that Canada's robbing them, which is not anywhere near true. We're selling them our oil at record low prices, which we could be selling to other countries at much higher prices. Remove that from the equation, and we're at a very clear export-import. Within the deficit, it's not true at all. It's a lot of rhetoric, and I understand him from his point. He's trying to fight the best for his country. He doesn't care about Canada, nor should he. But we need, our prime minister is not necessarily fighting it. Christina Freeland was one of the worst, people to go and negotiate a deal. I think there's a video online with us and the European Trade Union on negotiating. Christina Freeland went and she, I think there's a video of her crying with tears. Like, our trade with Europe has not done much. All you have to do is go sign the contract. And even then, and Donald Trump took a look at it and said, I'm going to dismantle Canada when it comes to CUSMA, if that's the people leading it. When Carney took over, he replaced him, but I don't know if they're any better than that. CUSMA is going to be as strong as we can negotiate it for, and we have two choices. We're either going to give up or we're going to hold as long as we can until Trump leaves office. It's one or the two.
Right.
In Canada agriculture, we better not give up on the milk. That's my personal opinion. I come from the world of global trade compliance. There's a lot of, you talk about jobs and farming and all that. If we negotiate on this and we give up these things, we won't have the proper jobs for it. We won't have anybody to employ for it. So we need to hold off as much as we can. We need to create a better trade agreement with the rest of Europe. Forget America. At this point, you can't have all of your eggs in one basket. Imagine you have a company, right? You own a corporation. Yeah. You have one client that makes up 80% of your revenue. Are you okay with that? What happens if the client leaves? What you need to diversify.
And of course,
we don't have any of that. Canada, where we're becoming really good in agriculture, is vertical farming and greenhouse farming. We're now able to grow tomatoes at record numbers. We're able to grow cucumbers at record numbers, bell peppers at record numbers. And if the government just invested into it, we'll actually have something to export when it comes to agriculture, and we can run it all year round. It's something that I hope the government really supersedes. And, when it comes to CUSMA, I'm not going to say forget about it. It's a huge trading partner of ours, but we need to diversify. That should be the number one goal of ours.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's a great point. Greenhouse farming and the vertical, I think we definitely need to focus on given where we're going with this. And I think we've been slow to the market on it. I hope we're going to accelerate that and put some money into it. We talk about productivity in Canadians all the time on this show. So how our productivity levels are so low. When farming, now's the time, given where we're going with CUSMA, in my mind, we got to accelerate that, put more money. And when we put money into programs, like, for example, anything to do with farming on the West Coast, we need to make sure that we're getting the return and we're getting the productivity levels. But right now, it's hard to get people to go onto those farms. That's the issue we're having. How do we convince our citizens to move from tech jobs that they hope to get sitting in the main cities to move back to the farms? And that's the tough, because if I'm sitting, I don't know about you, you're definitely younger than I am. How do you go into people your age and younger and say to them, okay, transition back to the farms, use your technical skills as well as your technology skills to actually advance yourself. You're going to make a good living. Because I know myself, I knew a number of farmers, like I mentioned, throughout the Windsor-Essex corridor when I was involved. They made a great living. They had a great life. And it's just, how do you convince people to move out of the main cities again?
There's been studies on this in other countries and how to get people back into those rural jobs, not in Canada. I mean, not any successful ones in Canada, but you have to look at it from a generational point of view. Like you've heard, Starbucks trying to get into, I think it was Japan, and it was essentially non-existent, right? Coffee wasn't a thing in Japan for anything. Starbucks and all that wanted to get into it. They knew that they couldn't get into it right away. So what they started doing is going to children's television shows and all that, and then putting advertising coffee in it. Within 10 to 15 years, it just blew up, and now coffee is everywhere because the next generation took over that, right? High tea drinkers. And they took the same methodology in other countries and added it to it. We need to train the next generation. We can't focus on this one. We need to focus on children between the age of 10, 15, 16, and show them the benefits of it. Right now, we're not going to do that. So you either have two choices. You're going to do it that way and think of a long-term solution. There's no quick fix. Or the other one is exactly what we talked about before, immigrants. There are very, very selective immigrants we should be bringing in. In the actual interviews with them, we need to talk about, hey, this is where you'd be living. This is, how you do this. They tried. They didn't do it properly. There's nothing effective about how they're doing it. They have government programs. It is not effective whatsoever. You can create it. By the way, it's not about buying a farm. It's not about any of that. You can make an incredible living by becoming an electrician, servicing all the farm equipment. Oh, yeah. And you start your own company. You get 4 or 5 farms that you do it for. You have a business making, 400,000 or 500,000 a year. We're not talking about going to the farm and doing the physical work on a regular day-to-day basis. There's plenty of jobs and an entire ecosystem based on it. It doesn't have to be one thing. It could be any of it.
Yeah. Well, I spent a lot of time early in my life. I spent a lot of time with horses. And so quite frankly, and was involved in horse racing in a big way. I was always amazed at the spin-off jobs that came out of horse racing, whether it was, the blacksmith, whether it was the tack shop, whatever it was, the vets. So that spin-offs of just being involved, in rural Canada are amazing for the community. And I was lucky enough to be involved in a program where we funded a significant amount of, it was horse racing. And quite frankly, that spun off, you could see the economic impact effects directly, the people buying new trucks, new trailers, getting involved. Yeah. I've seen it in my lifetime. I know it works. It's just trying to convince people to do it. And that's the tough part right now. And it's interesting you brought up the point. When we came, so my family came from Italy, of course. And when we came, we were actually ushered up to the north, because quite frankly, my grandfather had a lumberjack. So, worked on a farm, had the lumberjack experience, cutting trees. So he went up and that's what he did. He worked on the docks and then lumberjack, and that was his skill set. And they actually, when he came in through Halifax, that's where they sent him directly, was Northern Ontario. And so he moved up there, and you had to be sponsored by family in those days. So quite frankly, all our family was up past the Sioux. And so we were all sent up, and that's why we worked where we worked. And it's very interesting, that's, we're seeing programs now, but we don't see what we did in the past and how that works so well.
Yeah, but, I think there is an opportunity here, and I'm pretty sure you're going to agree with me on this. There's a really big opportunity to convince Canadians right now to go and move up there. We're burnt out. I talk to candidates every day from the corporate world, right? We're in the recruitment agency. We do corporate jobs and we do warehousing and logistics jobs. They're burnt out. They're burnt out from the 9 to 5. They're burnt out by giving it all to a company that would fire them in a heartbeat. They try to hire the lowest, possible salary. Within 1 minute they get fired. It takes them 8 months to find another job. They get fired from that as well. I talk to people all the time right now that are trying to move away from downtown, go more up north where they can get more land, more dollar for value, and they're raising their kids up there. Right now, there is an opportunity to do it. I wouldn't know how to do it. Do you? Maybe you do because you come from that land. I ensure you take a family of 2 kids living downtown. I live in core downtown in a very, very family-oriented building. You ask them, how would you do it? They have no idea. They don't. My neighbor is an engineer. You ask him how he would do it. He would have no idea. I think educating them and showing them really how easy it is and what the benefits are, they'll be able to do it in a heartbeat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think so. It's interesting. So one of my businesses, I actually had a beer salesman, and he came to me one day. His name was Justin. I love Justin. He was a great guy. He came to me one day, and he said, I'm leaving. I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going to go run a cattle farm up north. And I said, do you have any idea about cattle? He says, I've been reading about it. So this kid, I call him a kid because when you're my age, everyone who's younger than you is a kid. But so he leaves, and I kept track. After COVID, I haven't talked to him that much, but before COVID, I was keeping track with him. He actually made it work. He's doing it. He's actually doing it, and he's bringing his family up. He's living up north. Justin, if you get it watching the show, please call me. But he figured out that his lifestyle, being in Toronto, traveling around in traffic and the day-to-day grind, wasn't for him and his wife. Sold everything, leveraged himself, went in, bought a cattle farm, and actually is doing fairly well last time I talked to him. And you hear these stories, but, with automation and everything going on and the capital investment, you're starting to see the government, which is great, and I'm seeing it through BDC programs, which is really nice, the Business Development Corps. They're starting to put a little money into this. And when, a lot of money right now in AI. So you can see a ton of, so if you have an AI company, BDC is funding those companies, but you're starting to see they're actually putting money into farming and manufacturing in a big way. And I think that's a good use of, as long as there's KPIs, key performance indicators with those loans, I think that's a magnificent thing to do to get people to actually go and start to participate. Because if I can get that initial capital hurdle out of the way, I'm going to take a risk.
I'll tell you one thing. We are a recruitment agency, and I've invested more than you could imagine on coming out with the software side of recruitment. It's it's launching very soon. It's called Recruitable. It's an applicant tracking system, AI powered. I didn't want to do this because I wanted to. I was just so frustrated over the software that my recruiters and I use. I'm like, I'll rather just go and invent our own. And I decided that I'm not going to incorporate that business in Canada. I'm going to incorporate it in the U.S. and I didn't want to deal with Canada anymore, especially under Trudeau's. More money than you could imagine went into this. A lot more than I thought, and would have reconsidered it before starting it. Probably, yeah, if I knew it. Before the product even launches, we're spending around $8,000 a month on servers, data centers, and all that. And I didn't mind it, but I'm like, I'm not doing it. Canada is a huge problem, and with Canadians that are starting their businesses in the U.S. So we're not even paying taxes here for our corporations. We're all paying for it in the U.S. His new program, they actually, if you're using a Canadian data center, they'll refund you about 50% of the cost. If you're using Azure or AWS, if you're using a Canadian-based data center, like they're a small company in Canada, they'll refund you at a 75, 80%. I look at that. I looked at all the other government programs Mark Carney created in the new, I think it was June 4th when he announced it. I said, I'm moving my corporation back over here.
Oh, nice.
I did it, yeah.
Good for you.
I said I'm going to move it back over here. It makes sense finally to be here in Canada. And I did it. Microsoft gave us credit. The government of Canada gave us credit, and it made sense to bring businesses over here. Agriculture over here, we're still not innovating. We're buying. We're purchasing from other countries. And you think Canada would be the number one innovator because it's cold, 70% of the year. We can create ways around it, and we're not. So innovation is where it should be. I don't think the credit should just be to go and just incorporate AI into your existing, but to innovate AI is where it should be. We need to have governments going in and properly funding actual businesses, not just saying that, hey, if you incorporate AI. So they have a chance to do it. You know who does this really well, by the way?
Who?
Israel. When you look at Israel,
I was going to ask you.
When you look at Israel, it is a very, very tiny country.
Yeah.
It has one of the best agricultures in the world. I went to Costco the other day and I saw pomegranates from Israel because they're one of the best when it comes to vertical farming. They don't even import that much because they just grow their own fruits, their own vegetables for such a small country, and they're agriculture experts. Their innovation is incredible. You look at a country that is just based on survival, and forget the politics behind everything else. Just let's talk about the innovation side of it. They have no resources whatsoever, zero. They have no natural. They're just in the desert. Yet they knew that they needed, to have control over their own water. They are the number one country and the innovators and the founders of distilling water from the ocean into drinkable water. In fact, Israel has a problem that they have too much water, like drinking water. So they ask people to actually leave the faucets on and all that. They did such a good job at it, but they did it because of survival. They needed it for their own survival, and they innovated and they created. Now they're actually going to all the other countries around Africa and other parts of the world, and they're training them on how to build that entire system to take ocean water and convert it into drinking water. And then all the excess salt, they actually sell into chemicals and, skincare and all that, where you can actually make money off of it.
Wow.
But that's what happens when you have a need. And you did same thing with agriculture, by the way. They realized that, hey, we can't depend on any other country. We need to do this on our own. And now they're exporting it and the technology. So what is Canada doing to innovate on the technology side? I generally don't know. I don't have that. I tried. I really, really tried Googling it. When was the last time we had a company in Canada go for an IPO? I think it's been years.
Yeah, no, we're not doing anything.
We're not. I don't think we've had a real Canadian company go for an IPO.
No, it's one of the it's the actually opposite, to tell you the truth. They're delisting more than they're listing. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. So when you look at your first question, how do you get Canadians back over there? We first of all, we need to train them. We need to educate them about all the jobs, all the opportunities. I live downtown. I don't know a single person who's done it. But also, within the world of downtown, I don't know a single person who's ever even thought about farming, who's thought about innovating. But at the same time, out of all my friends, I'm the only one who lives downtown. Everybody else moved up north, King City, and even more than that. So there is an opportunity.
Oh, I think there is. I think there is. The void, though, and I think you hit on it. It's trying to figure out a way to get people through, to get those skills to actually do it and get there. Going to countries like Israel. So that's an interesting one because, all the focus on Israel lately, but, technology-wise, they're a very savvy country. They've actually figured out a lot of processes, like you said, being in the middle of the desert. We do a lot of shows actually where we talk about Norway, because Norway's been a very interesting focus of ours for the last few months. And you look at Norway and you look at all the innovative things they do in their climate. It's amazing. Like Israel, they've advanced their technology. They've created a wealth fund. You know, they use oil strategically. They do all these really cool things that actually build the communities. We have it. We talk about it. We talk about us being mineral resource, water resource. We talk about all these things. We need to start figuring out how to do it and align it. That's the crazy thing that I'm so happy you said I'm moving my company back to Canada. That's amazing. Now, you know, trying to help this government figure out how to align the pieces. That's you know, where we talk a lot on the shows we do at TPL, to try to get people. And you know, one of the things we're constantly talking about is, you know, how to use AI strategically to do that. The challenge right now is, you know, AI in agriculture or AI in the rural West. It's being rebuffed a little bit, right? People are kind of going, "Oh, I'm okay. I don't need a data center. I don't need any." So we're kind of, as Canadians, we're kind of hot and cold on this idea. When you talk to your clients, you know, are they talking about kind of data centers in the West, you know, what they're going to do?
They need employees. That's what they talk to me.
Okay.
They need employees. Their companies, clients are getting upset. Clients are leaving them. And the client is just going down to another logistics company down the street, and that is facing the exact same thing. They need employees. That's the first thing they're thinking of.
Yeah.
They're not filling jobs. They're not, and we're trying to figure it out. We're trying to figure out how to exactly recruit candidates for them. But the truth is, it is very, very difficult.
Right.
That's the number one thing. Data centers. We looked at them for recruitable for our software company. And again, I think you kind of have to stick with the big ones, which really sucks. Rogers is not doing a really good job with it. To be honest, Rogers is getting more subsidy than anyone else, yet they're innovating the least.
Yep.
I don't understand why we're giving money towards them and for their innovation. It makes absolutely no sense. Data centers could be, you know, huge, but if we had the electricity cost, if we had everything else, it makes no sense. It just doesn't.
Well, we have the cold, we have the water, we have the hydroelectricity. You know, Bell's gone into it big time, right? Saskatchewan, you hear about it. But, you know, they've been rebuffed in other places. You know, Alberta just shut down Connecticut, right? So there's hit and miss when you go to the West Coast to see who's really going to get into data centers and make it work. And it's a shame because Manitoba also, you know, Jet AI got turned down. So how do you balance that out? And if you can't find the right people, even to get into farming, how do you get people to go into technology in rural Canada in the AI centers? It's tough.
It is. I think this is where, you know, we stop blaming the government. We start blaming, you know, companies where they need to give them more incentive to go over there. Companies, you know, I recruited for a company. They had an incredible guy over there who was bringing in, you know, X amount of number. This was for a logistics sales job. Let's say, I'm not going to give the actual number. Let's say it's $1 million a year. In Toronto, they offered him $130K base and about 250,000 OTE. In Winnipeg, the candidate brought in more than the guy in Toronto, yet they offered him a smaller salary. And he's like, why? Because that's the cost of living. But he's driving more revenue. Who cares what the cost of living is? He's driving more revenue to your business. And they're like, no. Okay, well then now you're going to come to me and complain that you can't find people. How is that on us? He drives more revenue. How is that on us?
Right.
So, you know, companies need to figure that out as well.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we will. We're growing, right? So, you know, and every day I think we're learning. You know, before you go, I just wanted to tell us a little more about your company, because at the beginning you kind of gave me a quick snapshot of it. You're doing recruiting, you're doing resourcing. Yeah. You know, just tell the folks, because I think it's interesting. You know, you came back, you're making it happen. How can you help? Like, how can you help? If I have a farm or I have a business out west, how can you help them?
Yeah, if you need employees anywhere, you need operations directors, technology people, you have logistics. employees. We have logistics talent agency, and what we do is we go out and we headhunt. So we convince people to leave their current jobs and go out and to your job. We need to create a business case of why that needs to happen. We've moved candidates from Toronto to Winnipeg. It's happened. We've done it multiple times. We've done it from Vancouver to Eastern Canada. We've done it multiple times. Most people don't know that those jobs even exist, right? They don't know that it's an option. It's very, very doable. I can assure you, based on what we spoke before, people in Toronto want to leave. They want a quieter life. They want all of it. So as long as the companies offer the same salary and they realize, hey, I make $120,000 a year over here. Over here I'm getting, all I can do is live paycheck to paycheck with a 1-bedroom apartment. If I move to Halifax, if I move to Winnipeg, I can get a house with it. That's what we do. We convince them to leave their jobs and realize that there's a much better, life elsewhere. But I'm going to put the blame back into the company and say, you need to offer them the same wages.
Yeah. Thank you, Eden. And thank you for taking the time today. Yeah, great insight.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
All the best.
Thank you.
Looking for reliable and convenient personal safety products? Less Lethal has you covered. As Canada's only authorized Byrna distributor, we provide a range of products for recreation, protection, and security. Explore our Byrna launcher lineup, including the LE, SD, TCR, and Mission 4, designed for different levels of performance and protection needs. We also offer the Banshee personal safety alarm, designed to protect children, women, and vulnerable individuals. Because your safety is our top priority. Shop now at lesslethal.ca.